So, whatever happened to the film that some people claim is the most accurate historical representation of the gunfight at the OK Corral ever brought to the big screen in the 1993 classic Western Tombstone? Let's find out.
Movies, music, and monsters.
Hey, my friends, Dan Monroe here, talking about movies, music, and monsters. Oh boy, Tombstone, without a doubt, probably not only one of my all-time favorite westerns, but also one of my favorite movies in general, and for a very good personal reason. Way back in 1987, in my first year of college, a guy came up to me and said, "Hey, you're really tall. How would you like to be a cowboy at Fantasy Island Amusement Park?" And I said, "A what? Where?" Well, little did I know that I'd be embarking starting that day on a 30-year journey of providing all the entertainment to a local amusement park. I got hired to play the Marshal of Western Town in the Shootout Stunt Show in 1987. Then, in 1996, being me, I then formed my own company and took over all the entertainment at the park and continued to write, cast, produce, and create hundreds of shows over the years, including the most popular show at the theme park at that time, the Wild West Shootout. Right in the midst of the height of my Wild West cowboy career at the park comes this unbelievable film, Tombstone. Probably saw this in the theaters 4 or 5 times, hundreds of times later on VHS and Laserdisc. It was so much freaking fun to watch this film the night before and then literally go to the park the next day and be a gunfighter right there on the streets of Western Town. Such amazing memories. I just couldn't resist doing a video all about this amazing film. So, grab your shotgun, your favorite dancing girl from the local saloon, shine up your silver Marshal badge with a bucket of stale popcorn, and let's dive in.
You tell 'em I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me.
Now, the original story as to how this film actually came to be made is really quite interesting. Westerns in Hollywood in the 1990s weren't really something that were front and center at the box office, even though the 1980s had some unbelievable westerns that are so near and dear to my heart, like Young Guns, Pale Rider, and of course Silverado. But the early 1990s did give us some incredible classics like Dances with Wolves and of course Unforgiven. Enter screenwriter Kevin Jarre, who had not only written the Oscar-winning Civil War epic Glory, but was also now interested in dabbling in the Old West himself. He spent quite a bit of time, almost an entire year, I think, writing the first draft of this screenplay, and here's where things really start to get super interesting. Everybody knows that Kevin Costner had a big-time Western right about the same time as Tombstone called Wyatt Earp, but believe it or not, Kevin Costner's involvement with the Old West actually started not with his Wyatt Earp movie, but with Tombstone.
Wait, what? You've been drinking a little too much sarsaparilla.
Hang on, hear me out. Costner read the screenplay and was super impressed with it, but after meeting with the writer, Kevin Jarre, he wanted to shift the focus of the film away from being an ensemble cast and focus more specifically on his interpretation of the Wyatt Earp character specifically, which is exactly what he did with writer and director Lawrence Kasdan, the guy who wrote The Empire Strikes Back and Raiders of the Lost Ark. Anyway, Costner said to the writer, "The heck with this, if you're not going to do it my way, I'll just go off and make a competing film to Tombstone, and we'll just let the audiences battle it out as to which one they like best. Personally, I like Both of them, but for completely different reasons.
So, Kevin Costner just rode off into the sunset?
Not at all. Exactly the opposite, in fact. Costner had pretty much become a really powerful figure in Hollywood at the time and did just about everything he could to stonewall both the casting process and the production of Tombstone, which he now considered to be a direct threat and competition to his film, Wyatt Earp. So the Tombstone screenplay eventually made its way into the hands of the Disney Corporation or directly to Kurt Russell. I've heard two different sides to this story. One, that Kurt Russell took the screenplay to Disney, who agreed to distribute the film, and the other, that Disney saw the screenplay first and agreed to distribute it only if Kurt Russell starred in the picture. So, now with a $25 million budget secured through Kurt Russell and Andy Vina, who was the guy who had produced Total Recall and the Rambo films, screenwriter Kevin Jarre was set to direct, and the search began for the perfect cast to play these iconic characters, and holy Jiminy Christmas, what a cast this film had. Kurt Russell as Wyatt Earp, William Dafoe as Doc Holliday.
Not so fast there, Huckleberry. Pretty sure you got that one wrong.
Well, actually, I didn't. Surprisingly, Kevin Jarre's first choice to play Doc Holliday was not Val Kilmer, but William Dafoe. But apparently, Disney was hesitant to hire Dafoe due to the controversy following his prior role in The Last Temptation of Christ in 1988, so Disney simply said, no way.
Seriously? Certainly a different Disney than we've got today.
You speak the truth, my friend. So, at that point, it was briefly considered that Kurt Russell would move over to the part of Doc Holliday, and Richard Gere would be brought on to play Wyatt Earp.
What the fricking heck is going on here?
I told you this film had a really rocky start, but eventually the studio agreed on Val Kilmer, and holy cow, what an incredible casting choice that was.
Val has, I think, gone into the heart of the real Doc Holliday, which I've never seen it on film. I've never even seen anybody attempt the Southern accent, let alone his refined Southern quality mixed with his psychotic look at life that is very different from anything else.
And every version of the story of Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp that I've seen, they usually put them against each other, which is odd because the actual story is so fascinating that they are legitimate friends.
Michael Biehn, Powers Booth, Robert Burke, the gorgeous Dana Delaney, Sam Elliott, Bill Paxton, Jason Priestley, Michael Rooker, Billy Zane, and even an extremely brief appearance by everybody's favorite time-traveling, ape-fighting astronaut, Charlton Heston.
Warning, you forgot about Billy Bob.
Yup, believe it or not, Billy Bob Thornton was in there too.
Go ahead, skin it. Skin that smoke wagon and see what happens.
Yeah, this film is probably one of the most quoted films in Hollywood history, that is for sure. I bet I know at least 500 lines from this film.
500 must be a peach of a hand.
Oh, I see what you're doing there. A challenge?
You called down the thunder, well now you got it.
Against me? You would lose.
Not me. I'm in my prime.
I see what you're doing there, but okay, that's enough.
I have not yet begun to defile myself.
Keep it up, and I'm gonna pull out your power pack.
You're a daisy if you do.
Speaking of that line, based on many historical sources, several things from this movie were considered historically correct, like Doc Holliday actually saying, "You're a daisy if you do," and Wyatt Earp walking out into the middle of a river to kill Curly Bill. According to historians, he actually did that.
The Westerns that I've seen in the past, Wyatt Earp, he was basically just a lawman, a real straight line lawman. Didn't really ever explore the realities of the other sides of his character in a very dark side. To me, he's an interesting guy because he's 360 degrees. He did good things, bad things, and all the things in between.
Fun fact, veteran film star Robert Mitchum was also going to star in the film as one of the Clanton gang, but when filming started, he suffered a slight injury due to a, shall we say, misunderstanding with his horse, but still did do the super cool opening narration of the film, and with such an incredible cast in place, what else could possibly go wrong? Well, believe it or not, just about everything. Principal photography for Tombstone began in May 1993 in Arizona, which was coincidentally only about 60 miles from the actual location of the historic city of Tombstone, and around this time, Disney absolutely insisted that Tombstone needed to be ready for a worldwide theatrical release by Christmas of 1993, putting tremendous strain on the production. And yes, you guessed it, Kevin Costner strikes again, essentially emptying out all the Western costumes and props from all the Hollywood prop houses for his film, Wyatt Earp, basically leaving little, if nothing, left for the Tombstone gang.
This Costner chump is starting to get on my nerves.
Yeah, there's two. And the problems continued when it became extremely obvious very early on with both the cast and the crew that Kevin Jarre, the writer and director of the film, was apparently a much better writer than he was a director, way more concerned with camera angles and costumes than the actors. He basically didn't get along with anyone, didn't really care if the rest of the cast made suggestions. In fact, he didn't even want to hear their suggestions. It was either his way or no way at all, which was a pretty bad attitude to have, considering this was his first time as a director. So, with only a little more than 3 weeks into production, Kevin Jarre rode off into the sunset, along with about 80% of all the footage that he shot, and what an incredible relief that was to the rest of the cast and the crew, leaving the entire production without a director until George P. Cosmatos was brought on board to fill in the gap, absolutely determined to get this movie out by Christmas. So the slashing of script pages began, cutting entire shots here, eliminating entire scenes there, refocusing the entire film more towards Wyatt and Doc rather than the larger ensemble piece, something that didn't go over extremely well, obviously, for the rest of the actors, mostly Sam Elliott, who really felt that this new direction was just cutting the story way too thin, and to make matters worse, this new director, Cosmatos, was apparently kind of a real jerk on set, rude, arrogant, just downright nasty, which caused a lot of the crew to simply walk out. Even their Oscar-nominated cinematographer quit not once, twice, but 3 times due to having to deal with this guy. Michael Biehn was so frustrated with this director that at one point he actually told him to go f*** himself. Thanks. And from the mouth of Val Kilmer himself, the entire production was at this point one unholy mess. But in the end, it was actually Kurt Russell who was the guy that brought everybody together, kept the production running smoothly, despite the problematic director. Really gotta give that guy a lot of credit, or maybe all the credit. He basically unofficially took over as director, and luckily the extreme talent of the rest of the cast really didn't need a lot of directing. They knew what they had to do, so they just went ahead and got it done. Fun fact, the real Wyatt Earp's 5th cousin, named Wyatt Earp, was also in the film and played Billy Claiborne.
We're here to disarm you. Throw up your hands.
Okay, now, as far as the gunfight at the OK Corral.
Correction.
Excuse me?
It should have been called the gunfight near the OK Corral, since the skirmish actually took place in a vacant lot next to Fly's photo studio near the OK Corral.
Okay, the gunfight near the OK Corral. Happy?
Ecstatic.
Has been studied extensively by historians over the years, and many people believe, even though it was in direct competition with Costner's own interpretation of the fight in Wyatt Earp, which does have subtle differences to the gunfight in Tombstone, that this particular interpretation of the fight is most commonly referred to as the most accurate. And think about it. Can you freaking imagine members of two opposing sides only 6 feet apart with about 30 shots fired in only 30 seconds? Wow. The score for this film was absolutely amazing, and one of my personal all-time favorite soundtracks, composed and produced by the brilliant Bruce Broughton, the genius behind other incredible scores like Silverado, Sherlock Holmes, and the 1998 Lost in Space remake, among others, with really deep musical connections between this score and Max Steiner's epic music for John Ford's The Searchers. Originally, Jerry Goldsmith was considered to score this film, but had to bow out due to a scheduling conflict. However, Goldsmith himself personally recommended Bruce Broughton for the job, who created an absolutely wonderful soundtrack, which I highly recommend to this day. So, after only 3 short months, principal photography on Tombstone wrapped and was released to theaters in December 1993, and even though it had an R rating, did extremely well with a box office of almost $60 million.
But what about Kevin Costner's Wyatt Earp movie?
Well, that opened just a few months later in the summer of '94, and despite the fact that I really do like that movie as well, it bombed with a budget of almost $65 million, bringing in only $25 million.
That's what you get for messing with my Tombstone, Mr. Costner.
Tombstone was released on VHS and Betamax in 1994, a widescreen edition in '97, a director's cut on DVD in 2002, and a widescreen high-definition Blu-ray of the theatrical cut in 2010.
Wait, no 4K Ultra HD release?
Nope, not yet, but fingers crossed. Okay, but what about all the super cool costumes and props from the film? Well, believe it or not, there are actually some really cool props left these days. One of the immortal U.S. Deputy Marshal badges came up for sale at a prop store auction in 2022 and pulled in over 7,500 pounds. This is really cool. Sam Elliott's Virgil Earp's boots, again, selling in 2024 at a prop store auction for over $2,800. One of Kurt Russell's Wyatt Earp's Stetson hats sold at the same auction for almost $12,000. And here's an entire Kurt Russell Wyatt Earp hero costume from the film, pulling in almost 13,000 pounds. I mean, come on, how cool is that? Tombstone was not only an extremely beloved film by both critics and fans, but more importantly, a pioneer in reintroducing the Western genre to audiences in the mid-1990s, brilliantly and majestically paving the way for other great Western-themed movies and TV shows throughout the 90s and 2000s, including Maverick, The Quick and the Dead, From Dusk Till Dawn, The Mask of Zorro, Open Range, 3:10 to Yuma, Deadwood, Yellowstone, and so many more. We could be here all day, but that, my friends, is the topic of another video. I really hope you guys enjoyed that deep dive all about Tombstone, and if you did and you like this kind of stuff, please consider subscribing to the channel. I've got a whole bunch of new videos coming up really soon that I know you guys are just gonna dig. And please feel free to stop back anytime as we together continue the conversation on movies, music, and monsters.
Movies, music, and monsters.